When it comes to the oceans of our world, we sometimes take for granted all the life within them and the size of some of those creatures. While it's fair to say that you can name a few large creatures down there are plenty more where those came from. So here are 20 of the biggest underwater creatures in the world. Number 20. Leatherback Turtle. I bet you weren't expecting a turtle, were you? Because when most of you think of turtles, you think of ones that can be kept in a small thing like an aquarium or even a box, or fit in the palm of your hand. But there are exceptions to every rule, and the leatherback turtle is one of them, to the extent that it's over 6 feet in length, and that's just its body. When it comes to the flippers that it has, they can be 8 to 9 feet in wingspan by the time they're fully grown. And speaking of which, when they're born, they're only a couple inches long, which shows you just how much they have to grow in their bodies. Truly, this is a very atypical turtle. Even more, they're not afraid to live in a variety of places all over the world, and go from the beaches to shallow waters to even deeper waters in order to get their prey. Number 19. The fin whale. Now let's look toward the oceans that we have and see a creature that's said to be the second largest animal to ever be born, the fin whale. And yes, while not the most elegant of names, the fin whale made up for it when it came to the length of the creature, as it was said to be an incredible 85 feet, which is only about 20 feet less than the legendary blue whale. Not only that, it was also said to be about 80 tons in weight. Just think about standing next to such a creature and being so tiny compared to it, kind of boggles the mind. And if you're curious about how such a creature could live, that's because it was aquatic, and thus the waters and its own buoyancy allowed it to survive without getting crushed under its own weight. But despite its incredible size, they're actually filter feeders and not predatory at all. Though, could you actually imagine what it would be like if they were? There would be a lot of animals that would be afraid of taking on such a creature. And speaking of such a creature, if you were to see one giving birth, you'd be in for a big surprise, as their offspring are born at a length of about 21 feet. That's one big baby. Even more, because the mother whale is responsible for taking care of the young, she has to be bigger than the males in order to provide and still have the energy to survive. Number 18. Giant manta rays. Next up, we have the giant manta ray, which is the largest of the ray species and one that's both very large and very awe-inspiring when you're right up next to it, which people love to do, as I'll explain now. As you may have guessed, there are various ways to measure how big a creature is, and in terms of the giant manta rays, the term that I'm using is wingspan. They have one that's over 24 feet at times, and some state that it might be more likely to be 30, meaning that you could put multiple tall humans end to end against this ray, and at times it would still be bigger than all of them. Isn't that wondrous? Another interesting element of the giant manta ray is how it swims, depending on the waters that it's in. In deeper waters, they look to move in a straight line, but in more shallow, they're said to like the closeness of the sun and thus will have a bit more fun as they swim around. I guess even sea creatures enjoy having a good time. A real treat for certain divers is when a pack of giant manta rays come together in their pods, which can be up to 50 at times. Just think about being in the midst of that and trying to explain the mass and elegance that you're seeing before you. It would be difficult to describe for sure. Just as cool, though, is that the giant manta rays are welcoming of humans, and as a result of that, people love to find them in order to swim alongside them, giving a truly memorable experience as a result. Number 17. Killer whales aka orcas. And now for a reverse on the whale species, because most of us would associate whales with being kind and mostly loving and creatures that at times need help to be protected from threats. But when it comes to orcas, aka the killer whales, they don't really need our help at all. And no free willy jokes here, please. First and foremost, killer whales are just that, they are killers. They're a type of whale that will well and truly hunt their food, regardless of whether it's a seal, a sea lion, or certain kinds of fish and even other sharks. Yes, really. Orcas are one of the few creatures in the world that are known to go after not only sharks but also great whites. So much so that at one time, a bunch of shark carcasses were actually found without some of their organs because the orcas picked them clean. That's not disgusting at all. And while you'll likely have visions of SeaWorld and how the orcas can behave there, I do want you to remember that some of them attacked their trainers, and they've even killed a few. That's led to a lot of people to realize, albeit a bit too late, that we really shouldn't contain these creatures, not the least of which is because they can be up to 26 feet in length in regards to the male and weigh many tons. So yes, while you might appreciate the orcas for their looks and appearances at certain shows, these are still killer whales and an apex predator of the ocean, so just be mindful of that going forward. Number 16. Lion's mane jellyfish. There are all sorts of jellyfish in the oceans, and some of them are so small that you can literally fit one in the palm of your hand, and you could basically close your fist around it. But on the opposite side of that spectrum is the lion's mane jellyfish. But why is that? Well, it's because you can see this creature and yet wonder where it ends, because at times it's over 120 feet long. Now, I do need to be clear about something. The body of the lion's mane jellyfish is not all that long. The bell, as it's known, is only about 8 feet wide. So where does the other 112 feet come in? Well, that's actually measured in their very, very, very long tentacles. They can have up to 1,200 tentacles, which originate from under the bell in 8 distinct clusters of 70 and 150 each. So yeah, it's not really your typical jellyfish, but yet it's one that you have to look out for when you're in certain waters. In this case, that would be the colder waters of the ocean. Those who live near popular beaches won't be finding this one anytime soon, but you might find other jellyfish, so you should always be mindful. And if you're wondering if they're deadly, well, that would be a no. They can cause pain, and it is recommended that you get treated for a sting should it happen, but outside of extra circumstances coming into play, they cannot actually kill you. However, I wouldn't want to be wrapped up in those tentacles. I can definitely tell you that. Now it's time for today's topic. The Discovery Channel's latest shark documentary series has been abruptly cancelled after their camera crew encountered a massive, aggressive shark off the coast of South Africa. The team, known for filming some of the most dangerous predators in the ocean, was conducting routine underwater shots when the situation took a terrifying turn. According to crew members, the shark was unlike anything they had ever seen, far larger than any great white they had previously documented. The creature displayed highly aggressive behavior, circling their vessel and repeatedly ramming the underwater camera cage. The team managed to capture chilling footage of the shark's enormous eyes and jagged teeth before retreating to safety. The incident left the crew shaken, with some refusing to return to the water. "We've filmed sharks for years, but this was something else entirely," one crew member said. "It felt like it was hunting us." Speculation about the shark's identity has run wild. Some believe it could be a previously undiscovered species or even a surviving megalodon. Others argue it was simply an unusually large and aggressive great white. Discovery Channel has declined to release the full footage, citing safety concerns, leaving the world to wonder what truly lurks in the depths of our oceans. Number 15. Whale shark. When you hear the name whale shark, you're likely picturing a mass of sharks the size of a huge whale like the fin whale from before, but with all of the dangerous habits of the sharks that we know to fear like the great white. However, not exactly, in fact, not at all on the last part. You see, while most sharks are known to be predatory to some extent, even if it's only self-defense, there are 3 main species of shark that are known to be rather docile and, in fact, are filter feeders, the whale shark being one of them, and that pretty much separates it from the rest of its shark pack. Now, in terms of size, it does indeed mesh with your expectations. While the original whale shark found by hunters was only 15 feet long, the longest one ever recorded was 61 feet long. That's not only impressive, but it also makes it the largest fish species out there. So just remember, sharks are actually fish. But it's actually lucky for us that the whale shark's a filter feeder, because this fish could absolutely terrorize places if it wasn't. But you may be asking, how does it catch food? Well, it opens up its mouth and catches small fish and other small sea creatures in order to feed. Furthermore, the whale shark is not above interacting with humans in fun ways, and some are even known to let humans ride them like a horse, though obviously, I wouldn't recommend just trying to ride one of them. But if it allows it, well, have fun and tell all your friends that you just rode on a shark. Number 14. Sperm whale. And if you're hoping that the orca is the only killer whale out in the ocean, well, I'm sorry because I have another one for you in the sperm whale. The sperm whale's actually the largest of the toothed whales, of which the orca is part of, and it can reach lengths of 50 feet on average and almost 70 feet at maximum. That means that at times, they're 3 times the size of an orca, which is more than enough to put some fear into both people and other sea creatures. They feed on several species, most notably the giant squid, but also the colossal squid, octopuses, and fish such as demersal rays. But their diet's mainly medium-sized to squid. And to be clear, medium-sized, well, that's still about a dozen or 2 feet long, and the giant squid is much longer than that. The twist in all of this, though, is that because of how big it is, sometimes it accidentally eats other things while dining upon its main meal. Equally as impressive is that they're able to dive deep into the oceans at about an hour at a time in order to find food that they want. That's dedication and knowledge of where their preferred food is. Oh, and if you didn't know, Moby Dick was actually a sperm whale, which would explain a lot in terms of why that whale was able to do so much. Number 13. The giant Orfish. This next big fish is one that has a very interesting history, mainly because when it was first discovered, many actually believed that it was a hoax. That's because the creature in question, the giant Orfish, was found washed up along a beach, and such a creature had never been seen before. It wouldn't be difficult to see why they thought it was fake, given that the giant Orfish is the largest of the bony fish in the world and can sometimes be up to 56 feet in length, as well as weigh up to 600 pounds. Due to them not being discovered for a while, there are some who actually believe that they might be the origin of the sea serpent stories that we've all heard of over the years. And that would make sense, given their long and lanky shapes. And if they're down in the oceans, what else is there that we haven't discovered? Number 12. Great white shark. Now, if you really want to dive deep with these giant creatures, then you need to look no further than a creature that has terrified people for decades, the great white shark. Yes, it's time to talk about Jaws, but why? Well, because he's huge. On average, any normal old great white shark will grow to be about 15 feet in length, which is well over double the size of a tall human and almost 3 times the size of an average one. But that's not the biggest that they can get, that's just what's typical. Officially, one of the biggest sharks ever recorded was that of Deep Blue, a great white that was over 20 feet long, and unofficially, there have been ones that are said to have been 23 feet in length, if not more. Now, getting a bite impression might help them solve the mystery of how a great, and to be clear, their bulk does match their length as they can weigh up to thousands of pounds. Now, it's not hard to see one bit why so many people fear the great white shark. They are truly monsters of the deep by looks alone, with teeth that can rip through flesh and a reputation that has made them the stuff of legends and myths. To that end, no, great white sharks do not actively seek out meals of humans, but if the situation is right, they will attack a human without so much as a second thought. And their strength is enough to ram through a shark cage and have the speed necessary to blast into the air with their prey and slam them right down in order to get an easier kill. So yes, if you do see the fin of a great white, I hope that you're a good distance away or are near a safe place because you'll most likely need it. Number 11. Walrus. I don't really have to do too much other than say the name walrus in order for you to be able to picture it. After all, they're very noticeable and easy to describe. They have big bodies, massive tusks coming out of their mouth, and they're inspiration for all sorts of things, which include Pokemon. You get the idea. But if I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty about how big they are, in terms of weight, the biggest one of them can be around 4,400 pounds, though there are some claims that they can easily break the 5,000-pound mark. As for the length, well, that can vary, but there are some that have been caught that were 16 feet in length. So that's a long and stocky body that's more than capable of crushing something and yet also swimming through the water with ease. Number 10. Vampire squid. Now, there's a name that's going to strike fear into anyone, the vampire squid. Yeah, that's terrifying to both think about and potentially be next to, at least if it was as terrifying as the name implies. Because no, this thing will not suck your blood. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't mess with it, though. The vampire squid also isn't something that you'll see just every day, as it takes its home at about 2,000 to 3,000 feet below in the ocean's depths. Wow, look at that. Wow, holy cow. Now, if threatened, this defensive deep-sea Dracula doesn't eject ink as do most of its cephalopod cousins, nor can it change color in order to confuse an intruder in the way that its shallow water cousin can. Living as it does in the deep ocean where little light penetrates, color changing is kind of a pointless strategy. So what does it do to protect itself? Well, simply put, the vampire squid squirts a copious amount of sticky bioluminescent mucus towards its would-be predator, and that's pretty unique. Another thing that might make you never want to see this thing is its eyes. Proportionate to its body, it has the biggest eyes in the entire animal kingdom, which is not something you'd expect from a squid. Not much else can be said about the feeding habits of the vampire squid. Its diet is believed to consist of prawns, copepods, and other small invertebrates. And if you're wondering how big it actually is, well, I kind of wanted to wean you into it, if you will, because the creature really isn't that big at all. At maximum, it only gets to be about 1 foot long. That's not exactly scary, but when you look at what it can do and its giant eyeballs, you probably still don't want to see this thing up close. Number 9. The blue whale. Now, you know we're doing so well with these whales that we're having a whale of a time, so wouldn't it be well off if we kept telling you about some whale tales? Yes, I just did that. You're welcome. The blue whale is currently the biggest animal in the world. Note that I said currently because it's possible that there were creatures from the prehistoric era that were actually bigger. In terms of length, the blue whale can't be matched, but it's also hard to know exactly how big that they can get because how often are you going to be able to measure a whale of this size? The largest recorded blue whale ever was that of one that measured 98 feet long, but there are some who have said they measured a whale that was about 108 feet, though that measuring method has been disputed. And how do you back up the length? How about with a weight of 220,000 pounds? Yes, the male whale can actually weigh that much and it's terrifying. The females? Well, they can weigh even more at 247,000 pounds. Another cool thing about the blue whale is that they have an incredible lifespan, to the extent they've been recorded to live over 73 years, if not longer. Obviously, it's impossible to know just how big that they can get and how long they can live, due to them constantly migrating, and having one that can be studied from birth to death is hard. Sadly, you'll all likely know that the blue whale is constantly under siege by whalers, and though many have been working to stop this, as of now, it hasn't ended as much as anyone would like. Number 8. Basking Shark. Earlier, if you recall, I talked about a trio of sharks that are indeed sharks but don't exactly act like them. The whale shark was what I talked about before, and now I'll discuss the basking shark. This particular mega shark, if you will, is very easy to recognize because of its huge mouth that it uses to catch plankton and other small fish creatures in order to filter feed. Seriously, just look at the thing, it's gigantic. And while it wouldn't be the kind of shark to eat a human, few were in its path with its mouth open like that. Well, goodbye now. As for its size, it's said to be the second biggest fish around. However, an exact account of how big that it can be is rather, not surprisingly, mixed because the average of them is said to be 26 feet, which puts them only a few feet above the great white. However, there are other reports of them being over 30 feet, and a few historical accounts that seem to put them sometimes at over 40 feet. Another key distinction between them and other sharks is that they don't move very fast. Due to their filter-feeding nature, they'll happily just mosey along in the water with their mouth open and catch whatever happens to be there. So thus, if you were in the path of that giant mouth, you would probably be able to get away from it. Though if you do want to see what it's like inside the mouth of a basking shark, I'm not really going to stop you. Number 7. Southern elephant seal. Now, if you were curious as to whether there's a creature that's similar to the walrus, that would be the southern elephant seal. And if you're wanting specifics on that question posed earlier, these things can weigh double that of a walrus. That's a whole lot of bulk. Officially, more or less, one that would be caught was found to weigh about 11,000 pounds. Though to be clear, their length isn't that much more than a walrus, as some get to be about 12 feet in length. So it is a truly massive frame, and yet, not unlike others of its kind, it's fine with being both on land and into the water, to the extent that they can last on land for weeks before needing to go back to the cooling touch. And trust me when I say that you would not want to mess with this thing. Number 6. The Portuguese Man of War. If you gaze upon the Portuguese Man of War, your instinct would be to say that it's a jellyfish. But here's a plot twist, it's not. It's honestly not even a singular organism. Rather, what you'd be looking at was a multitude of organisms coming together to create a body by which they can do many things, which includes really hurting you if you got too close. The Portuguese Man of War is a siphonophore, which is a colonial organism made up of many smaller units called zooids. Now, all zooids in a colony are genetically identical but fulfill specialized functions such as feeding and reproduction, and together, they allow the colony to operate as a single individual, thus giving it the appearance of a jellyfish when it's actually not one. To be clear, though, this entity is not a regular jellyfish, it does sting like one, and as you're probably predicting by now, it's one that you don't really want to get hurt by. The species is responsible for up to 10,000 human stings in Australia each summer, so thus, it's a constant threat that people are very mindful of. And furthermore, even if the tentacles of the Man of War are dead or detached, they can still sting and inject people with their poison, which is just not exactly what you want to think about as you're swimming through the waters of the world. The venom can travel to the lymph nodes and cause symptoms that mimic allergic reactions, which include swelling of the larynx, airway blockage, cardiac distress, and an inability to breathe. Other symptoms can include fever and shock, and in some extreme cases, death. Number 5. Bluntnose Sixkill Shark. Now, while you may not know the name of the Bluntnose Sixkill Shark by memory, you should definitely pay attention to it, because this is a shark that's definitely large and in charge. In fact, on average, this particular shark can be about 20 feet in length, which puts it right up against the great white at times. Sixkill sharks possess variability in their feeding mechanisms that could have contributed to their evolutionary success and global distribution. These sharks are able to protrude their jaws and vary their methods of feeding depending on the situation. Yes, you heard that right, these are sharks that are able to adapt to their methods of eating just so that they can be fed, and that is frightening on a whole different level. But the catch is that a lot of people like to hunt this particular shark, and thus its numbers are very much endangered. Hopefully, though, that will be fixed over time. Number 4. Ocean Sunfish. Now, we'll have a look at a creature that's not only impressive in terms of size, but it's also a true wonder of the ocean and how it looks. The average ocean sunfish is about 10 feet long and weighs about 2,200 pounds. However, the biggest one could grow up to be about 5,000 pounds, instantly making it a fish that you need to behold for yourself. And that weight makes it one of the heaviest bony fish in the world. Sunfish are generally predators that consume largely small fishes, fish larvae, squid, and crustaceans, and that makes sense, because they would need a lot to fill up their bulky frames. They do have an interesting history with divers, and that allows them to swim alongside of them, which is no doubt quite the treat. Number 3. Japanese spider crabs. There are 2 species of crab that you could put as being the largest kind. One is the coconut crab, and that's because of its pure mass. But if you want length, you need to go to Japan to view the Japanese spider crab, a creature whose legs are so long that they can actually have a 12-foot wingspan. In contrast, their body's just over a foot long, showing just how disproportionate it all is when you look at it together. These crabs are typically found at depths of 150 to 300 meters, where they scavenge the ocean floor for dead animals and plant material. Their long legs are not just for show. They help them navigate the uneven terrain of the seabed and reach food in hard-to-access places. Despite their intimidating appearance, Japanese spider crabs are relatively docile and pose no threat to humans unless provoked. They are considered a delicacy in Japan, though overfishing has led to concerns about their population numbers in recent years. During the breeding season, these crabs migrate to shallower waters to lay their eggs, making them more vulnerable to fishing. Their larvae are tiny and look nothing like the adults, going through several stages of development before growing into their iconic form. The crab's unique anatomy and behavior have made them a subject of fascination for marine biologists and aquarium enthusiasts alike. In some aquariums, they are displayed as living examples of the incredible diversity of life in the ocean. And in fact, when it was first discovered in Japan's coastal waters, it would be dubbed Crabzilla, because no one had ever seen anything like it, and we don't blame them for that. Number 2. Giant sea star. Sea stars are creatures that we often think of as not alive, even though they most definitely are, and some of them are actually invasive species that can hurt humans when touched. However, if you want to talk about pure size, that would be the giant sea star that you need to look for, because these are over 3 feet long, and they're the second biggest sea star in the world, only second to the poorly known deepwater Midgardia zendaros. These massive sea stars are typically found along the Pacific coastline, from Alaska to Southern California, thriving in rocky intertidal zones and kelp forests. Their vibrant reddish-orange coloration makes them stand out, but it also helps them blend into their natural surroundings, providing camouflage from predators. Giant sea stars are voracious predators themselves, feeding on mussels, clams, and other small invertebrates by prying open their shells with their powerful arms. They use their tube feet, which are equipped with suction cups, to move and capture prey with surprising efficiency. Interestingly, these sea stars have the ability to regenerate lost arms, a process that can take several months but ensures their survival in the wild. Despite their size, they are vulnerable to environmental changes, such as rising ocean temperatures and pollution, which have led to declines in their populations in some areas. Scientists are studying these creatures to better understand their role in marine ecosystems and how they can be protected. And when it comes to their size, well, the giant sea star goes through a rather rapid growing process, though it does slow down once it gets older. Number 1. Giant squid. We started off with a turtle and will end with a squid, specifically, one that's very much a large squid. This is the giant squid, and rumors and tall tales about how big that it could be have been going on for generations, which includes possibly being the inspiration for the legend of the Kraken. And to be fair, there is some dispute about how big these squids can get, mainly because nobody can see them that often due to living in the deepest parts of the ocean. The best estimates do put them at about 43 feet in length, but their average is a lot smaller, so thus it's a gamble to say what the true max length is. The biggest claims have put them at about 66 feet, but to be clear, those are only claims and not confirmations. Their massive eyes, which are the largest in the animal kingdom, allow them to detect faint light and movement in the pitch-black depths of the ocean. These eyes are crucial for spotting predators like sperm whales, which are known to hunt giant squids in epic underwater battles. Evidence of these encounters can be seen in the scars left on sperm whales, caused by the squid's sharp hooks during their desperate attempts to escape. The giant squid's tentacles are equipped with powerful suckers lined with serrated rings, which help them latch onto prey with incredible strength. Their diet primarily consists of deep-sea fish and other squid, making them formidable predators in their environment. Despite their size and power, they remain elusive, with most of what we know about them coming from carcasses that have washed ashore or been caught in fishing nets. The first ever footage of a live giant squid in its natural habitat wasn't captured until 2012, highlighting just how mysterious these creatures are. Their ability to thrive in such extreme conditions continues to fascinate scientists and fuel speculation about what else might be lurking in the ocean's depths. And again, they can live in pretty deep waters, which includes being in over 3,000 feet below sea level. So until we get to study them more, we can only make certain assumptions on how big they actually are, and that's honestly a little bit scary. That's all from the realms of the ocean and the big creatures that live within. How many of them did you honestly know about beforehand, and which ones would you like to see up close just to witness their size? Was there a large ocean creature that I missed? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to check out the other cool things appearing on the screen, and I'll see you next time.